Hello, guys, how are you? And welcome to the week number 5 of our course of literature and language teaching. Hope everything has been good for you these days. It's still a difficult time. I know that certain things are improving, certain things are being a little bit more open, but nevertheless, I know it's still a tough situation. So, my best wishes for you. Well, as usual, I would like to start the class by sharing with you a poem. This one it's by Charles Baudelaire. It is a very famous French poet that wrote a lot of different things related to uh, life, despair, love, relationships, and existence in itself. So this one's called La Visiteur. L'aviateur, tout homme digne de ce nom, a dans le cœur un serpent jaune, installé comme sur un trône, qu'il s'il dit je vais répondre non. Plonge tes yeux dans les yeux fixes, de Satyrès ou de Nyx. Les dandys, pensez à ton devoir. Fais des enfants plein des arbres, polis de verre, sculptes de marbre. Les dandys vivra tout ce soir. Quoi qu'il ébauche ou qu'il s'espère, l'homme ne vit pas un moment sans subir l'avertissement de l'insupportable vipère. El avisador. Todo hombre digno de ese nombre tiene en su pecho una serpiente amarilla, como en un trono que dice no, si él dice quiero. Tú hunde tus ojos en los ojos de las nixes y las satiresas, y el diente piensa en tu deber. Tú engendra hijos, planta árboles, mármoles talla, pule versos, dice, ¿esta noche vivirás? Por más que espere o que proyecte, ni un solo instante vive el hombre sin conocer las advertencias de esta víbora insoportable. Well, short poem that nevertheless has many things to do with the doubt, right? The uncertainty sometimes. Like we would like to start new projects, to do new things. We really wish to do certain things or to achieve certain goals, but there's always the doubt over there, like a snake, as the author mentions, that doesn't really allow us to progress, and is always making our path a little bit doubtful. Well, guys, so the work that we have this week is particularly notorious because well, we have been working at a general level, just checking out certain generalities. But for almost a month, you have been like analyzing certain aspects about things that we require to take into account when dealing with literature as a tool for language teaching. So, particularly today, starting this week, we are going to get really explicit, or really, let's say, down to earth in terms of the book that you're going to use. But well, I'll explain about that in the assignment. For now, let's go to the slide number 41. Okay, so remember that until the previous lesson, what we have been doing is trying to analyze aspects or ideas related to the selection of books, right? A really important aspect, a really important task. Let's say that so far we have not even done the first activity. We have not until now like concentrated on anything of what is happening in the class, but what is happening before the class, the selection process. Okay, so this topic that we're going to manage today is like the link between the previous and the in-class, let's say, activities, right? And this is the one of editions and study guides, okay? Most of the people just, assigns the book and says go read it, and that's it. Yes, and then we arrive to the class with a worksheet or with an interview or with something like that, but there is no accommodation to what the student might experience when facing this book, right? So this editions and study guides topic that we're going to deal with today mostly is going to try to make the transition easier for the student. It's going to try to find alternatives, so some of the problems or issues that the student may have when reading the book, you can help him or her to solve them, to face them in a better way, to diminish those problems, to diminish the feeling of possible frustration or confusion, etc. Okay, so it's very important that given that you already have 4 weeks of work on diagnosis, we can say it, well, always bear in mind those possible problems or those possible positive aspects that you determine or diagnose in the first stage. Yeah, so that is going to be capital over here. Do not forget that work, like have it always at hand, because basically we're going to try to diminish or to eliminate somehow those problems, or at least make them a little less complicated for the student. So let's take a look at some of the informations that we have in here, some of the items, and the first of them is a glossary of words and expressions, right? So this is going to be really helpful. Okay, let's say that traditionally you're just given the book and that's it, and it's up to you if you understand it or not. But especially for students in certain levels, such as elementary or high school or even some language centers, well, looking for the unknown words is not necessarily easy, right? First of all, we have to be clear about something, and is that it is very likely that they don't even know how to handle a dictionary, right? I even ask you, do you guys know how to handle a dictionary? Do you know the conventions, if it is a noun, if it is a verb? Do you understand the examples that sometimes are given? This may sound a little bit insulting, but well, if you don't know, it's okay. But you have to determine, like, do you even know how to look alphabetically for it? I mean, in case if it's a physical dictionary, probably if it's a digital one, you wouldn't require that much. But well, so if some of you may have some difficulties with this, well, imagine students, no? Like they don't necessarily are familiar with all these conventions or interpreting different things, and what they would do was would be, for example, placing a whole body of text into a translator, and then they will get all sort of crazy meanings that will be even more confusing, and that will make them feel frustrated, because I mean, if you spend, I mean, you have to stop reading because you don't have the meaning of a word, and then you spend 5 minutes or 4 minutes to look for it online, and then what you get is even more confusing that you had. Well, that is going to definitely going to make you feel frustrated, right? So if you have the time, if you have the possibility, and if you want to have the student to have a better reading experience, a glossary could be a good idea. Now, some books, some editions actually have an incorporated glossary. Let me see if maybe I can show you one. Give me a sec. Example. Yes. So this is an edition of Oliver Twist that I have over here. Well, this was in the sun for a long time, so this is this color. It used to be yellow, but these editions by Simon and Schuster paperbacks are really good, especially for when we are teaching. It says over there, I know that it's reversed in the video, but it says includes detailed notes and commentary. So at the end of the book, there are by chapter some glossary and explanation of certain things, not only of let's say specific words, but maybe certain things related to locations or some different things, right? So if you're lucky enough to have an edition like this, well, congratulations, your work is half done. Yes. Why not completely? Because, for example, here, let's say that it has some vocabulary that may be too advanced, even for some students of certain levels. So probably what you would require to do is adapt it a little bit, but still it is a good alternative. Now, if you don't have an edition like this, that is most likely the case of everybody, because I know that most of you are reading just PDFs, and the editions that are over there are pretty basic. Yes, the ones that are available for free online. Most of them only have the book, and that's it. So you will have to do the glossary yourself, right? What is my recommendation? Well, first of all, use a glossary that is simple enough, but that encourages the use of language. So a glossary English and Spanish, I don't think it would be recommendable unless your students, and I know that that happens, for example, in public schools sometimes, it is mandatory, like unavoidable, to use Spanish sometimes. Even when you want to preserve the language practice in the class, well, sometimes you have to do it. So if you can help it, if you can avoid it, do not like place translations or literal translations of Spanish in there, but a definition that may be somehow easy enough for them to get. Some other, let's say, modalities of glossaries are no words, simply, I mean, not definitions, but simply the unknown word and a picture in front. Yes, and that's really helpful. Or you can combine both of them, right? Now, how can you decide what to put on the glossary? Well, you need to know your students. Supposedly, you did all the previous work of selecting the book, knowing their needs and abilities, what it is expected from them, what it is expected that they have already or that they know already, and based on that, you will select a certain amount of words that may somehow be problematic for them, and you anticipate that, and you see the importance of reading the book before yourself, of having read it before, because if you read the book and you are familiar with your students and you make a diagnosis and you know their needs and abilities, you know for sure what are the words that will be problematic for them. Okay. Now, another observation that I could recommend for glossary is that it is not alphabetic, but it is chronological, right? So let's say that when you are reading, you extract a couple of words. So, for example, in the chapter number 1, you know that there will be 2 or 3 or 5 words that will be problematic for the students. So you make sure you put it in the order in which they are going to appear, right? No matter if the first word starts with S and the second starts with A, well, it is more comfortable for them just to put them in that order, right? Now, if you still want to put it alphabetically, that's fine, but make sure that student knows how to face that challenge, if you want to call it, of looking for information in alphabetical order. Now, it is also very important, I consider it at least, that students of certain levels be able to have a glossary of expressions as well. Sometimes knowing the meaning of a single word into a context, a literary context especially, is not enough. So probably you would require to put or to include expressions, phrases, slang, or some explanations about certain references that the author may do and are not necessarily known for the student, right? So that about the glossary, right? It is very important. You don't need to do the whole, I mean, let's imagine that we're going to be working on the whole book, on the whole novel, right? The one that you're reading right now. So the idea is that if you're going to use that book for, I don't know, a semester, the whole scholar year, well, you can do this glossary progressively. I mean, it's not necessary that you have to do it from the day one. That would be the ideal, no? But if you're not able to do that because of time, because of you don't know exactly the students, and you're required to get in touch with them, I mean, throughout the year in order to get them to know a little better, get to know them a little better. Well, that's a possibility, right? They do it progressively. Now, the next one, it's quite important. Remember that what we're doing is preparing study guides. Yes. So all these can go in a whole document that you give them in advance before they start reading the book, or this can be complementary information that you use in different classes. It really depends on what you want to achieve, what is the somehow the purpose, your time, etc. Right? So the second one, it would be a set of summaries or pre-questions would bring out the main flow of events in each chapter, right? So this is something that you could do, right? In which if you are reading a long book, or well, long is a relative concept, a book that has more than one chapter or that is divided in more than one part, what you could do is to either create yourself or look for online really short summaries of each chapter or if each relevant action that happened until the moment that you are reading, right? This, of course, will help the students to remember a little bit better what you're dealing with. So this is a possibility, like a short summary of 2 or 3 sentences about the initial chapters or the most important characters or well, different things related into the or mentioned into the book, or you can do it in the form of questions, right? So you can ask some general questions, but these questions must be, let's say, open enough. So the purpose is not really verify memoristic information, but to somehow remind the students about certain seminal or very capital events, characters, places that happen in the book or that will happen in the book at some point. Okay, so that's a possibility. Why choose one or why choose the other? Okay, in my experience, it depends on the group, right? So if your group is somehow disciplined and interested, at least at some minimum level in reading, or you see that they have a minimum interest, I would say that the summaries is the best way, right? Because they wouldn't consider that like additional reading. They would be open to do that, and it will be helpful for them. I mean, they will have that disposition of checking these summaries in order to say, oh, okay, yes, I remember this event. Please make them short, as I mentioned, 2-3 sentences per chapter, per event, per character, per relevant character will be more than enough, right? Now, that in the case that you have a disciplined group that it's more or less into reading. What about if you have a group in which most of the people don't read? You know, they were supposed to read 10 or 20 pages for today, and they arrive without reading anything, or just 2 or 3 pages, and then they don't remember a lot of them. Well, summaries wouldn't be a very good idea for them, because they will assume this like additional homework, additional reading, and probably they wouldn't do that. Or what's worse, these summaries would become or may become an excuse for not reading the actual chapters, right? Let's imagine that you have to read chapter number 1 that has 10 pages, and they don't do it because in the study guide there is a summary of the chapter number 1. So they would be like really, really smart and wouldn't read that and skip the thing, and that's not the point, no? So analyze your group, verify like what's the best strategy and what would work better for them, and you can select one or the other. Now, these questions, as I mentioned, uh, in the case that you select for them, so they should be uh, open enough for that. Like using questions such as what color was the hat of the main character, or in which date did they, I mean, certain characters met each other, or in which page this happened. Well, there's not really a purpose for those sort of questions, especially in these kind of exercises. Okay, so that's it. About the second observation, we have the glossary, then we have these possibilities of resuming or reviewing some of the chapters. The third one is definitely completely optional. It may be including this study guide, a short biography of the author. Um, let's say that if you decide to include this, it is because this is very relevant for understanding the book. Yes? If the author and his life and his training, education, his family, his somehow his nationality or his history have nothing to do with his work, well, you can completely forget about this part, the biography of the author. But if there's something really let's say really close, really personal, probably it's important to know certain details about the author. So let me give you an example. I have this book over here that is Mouse, and this is a comic book, like a graphic novel. And in this book we have the experience of a person who suffered the concentration camps of the Nazi, being a Jewish person. So because of his religion and natural precedents, he was tortured, and well, everything that suffered Jewish people on the concentration camps of the Nazis. And well, eventually this person survived and told all these stories to the author, that is his son. And well, he transformed this into this comic book story that tell these all these events, right? Now, knowing this is really relevant, because inside the book we are going to realize that there are real conversations between them, that let's say there are interactions in what they do. Of course, we have let's say a lot of real information in here, right? So somehow we have, for example, this part in which he's drawing. I don't think it's that clear, but well, he's even drawing the same comic book. Well, a lot of information that has to do with the real story of the author, and with his point of view, and with a lot of different things that are essential to understanding the work itself, right? So in those cases, you can present this biography. Now, how to present it? Again, it is up to you. Please, I am just giving you some headlines, but you can think about many different things. Such as in the glossary, you could just have text, or have images, or have a combination, or have somehow only English or only Spanish, right? Just like in the previous one, in the summaries, they could be illustrated, they could be somehow recorded. You can use it in I don't know, using an audio or a podcast. Well, the same for the biography, right? So you can there are a lot of animated biographies. You can find YouTube videos that are already done, so you don't have to, let's say, spend more time doing that. You can use comic book versions. You can see like fragments of movies about the author. Well, a lot of different things. As I mentioned, let's say that the first and the second are sort of mandatory somehow, especially the first. This third is optional, but if you're going to do it, well, make sure to do it in a way that is relevant, and not too boring, and not too long, and that specifically goes to the point. Okay, like you would like to mention all these things that I mentioned before, like about the person who was in the concentration camps, and the relationship of the author with the narrator that is the father, etc. Like, we don't care where he studied. We don't care if he lived for, I don't know, 5 years in Argentina when he was a kid. Yes, so unless there is a direct connection or an important connection um, for the contents of the literary work, well, that's not relevant. So you can omit all those traditional details that you will find on a biography, such as where he studied, if he got married, how many children did he have. Nothing like that. Just only relevant details. Okay. So that about the first three aspects. As you could see, I dedicated a long time to explain each one of those because I'm interested that this is clear enough. So in the next video, we are going to discuss the final components of these editions and study guides, and we will talk about the assignment, that this week will be only one because it should be very complete, right? So I am expecting to give you enough time and concentration for you to work on it, and we will focus only on that this week. Okay, so thank you very much. See you on the next video. Bye bye, hugs.